Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to tackle a question that trips a lot of people up. Are natural selection and evolution the exact same thing? We're going to see that according to our source material, the answer really boils down to one single, crucial idea: information.
So let's start with the big one, the question that's been on people's minds for centuries. When you look at all the incredible life on Earth, you just have to wonder, how did it all get this way? You know, how do creatures adapt and transform over generations? To start unpacking that, we've got to go back in time to one of the most important sea voyages in the history of science. It was a trip that gave us the very first piece of this massive puzzle. So picture this young guy, Charles Darwin, on a ship for 5 years. He was just soaking it all in, writing down every little detail about the plants and animals he saw. But one stop on this remote chain of islands was about to change everything. That stop was the Galapagos Islands. And for Darwin, this place was like a living laboratory. He started noticing something really peculiar. Animals that were obviously related, like tortoises, looked a little different from one island to the next, almost like each one was custom designed for its specific home. And this is where it really clicked for him, when he looked at the finches. Some had these big, tough beaks perfect for cracking open hard nuts. Others had these delicate, pointy beaks for picking insects. It was like each beak was a specialized tool, perfectly matched to whatever food was on that particular island.
And that led him to ask a pretty straightforward question, right? If you're on an island where the only food is tough nuts, who's going to make it? The birds with the flimsy beaks or the ones with the built-in nutcrackers? It wasn't that the birds were trying to change, it was just a simple matter of survival.
And that, right there, is the core idea of natural selection. The environment itself is the filter. It selects which birds get to live and have babies. And fittest doesn't mean strongest or fastest. It just means you're the best fit for your immediate surroundings, so you get to pass your genes on.
Okay, so Darwin's finches are the classic example, but let's bring it a little closer to home with another great story that really shows this whole process in action. This one's fantastic. So you've got these peppered moths, some light, some dark. For ages, the light ones blended in perfectly with the trees. But then the Industrial Revolution happens and factories start pumping out soot that turns the trees dark. All of a sudden, being a light-colored moth is like wearing a giant "Eat Me" sign for birds. The dark moths, they're perfectly camouflaged. And if you look at the genetics, you can see exactly what's happening. The gene for light color, that L gene, is literally being removed from the gene pool, one hungry bird at a time. After a few generations, bang, the whole population has shifted and almost all the moths are dark. Okay, and this is a really critical point from our source material. Notice what didn't happen. No new color, no new ability was created. In fact, to survive, the moth population lost the genetic information for being light-colored. This idea that you adapt by losing information is the key to everything that comes next. So this idea that you can adapt to your environment by losing genetic information is where we pivot. Because it explains the moths perfectly, but it raises a huge question when we look at the much bigger theory of macroevolution. I mean, just think about the sheer scale of this idea. We're not talking about moths changing color. We're talking about the theory that a single, simple cell over billions of years gave rise to, well, everything. Every fish, every dinosaur, every tree, every person. To help wrap our heads around this, the source gives us a great analogy. If you want to build a trash can, you need a little bit of information, a simple blueprint. But if you want to build a skyscraper, you need a staggering amount of new, complex, highly detailed information. And that's the central question the source material raises. If natural selection, the observable process, works by weeding out existing genetic information to help a creature specialize, where did all the brand new information come from to build things like wings and eyeballs and human brains from scratch? Well, the theory's answer to that massive question is mutations. Random changes in the DNA code are supposed to be the engine that writes all this new information. So let's take a look at what our source says mutations actually are and what they do. All right, so this is where we really get to the heart of the difference, according to our sources. We've seen how selection works. Now let's look at mutation, the supposed engine for that big picture evolution. A mutation, at its core, is just a mistake. Think of your DNA as this incredibly long and complicated instruction manual for building you. A mutation is simply a typo, an error that happens when that manual is being copied. For over 100 years, scientists have been forcing mutations in fruit flies to see what happens. And according to the source, what did they get? Well, they got flies with messed up wings that couldn't fly, flies with no eyes, even flies with useless legs growing out of their heads. In every single case, the genetic information was scrambled, broken, or deleted, not improved. Okay, but wait, you might ask, aren't some mutations helpful? The source says yes, but, and this is a big but, it's by losing something. A beetle on a windy island benefits by losing the genes for wings so it can't get blown away. A bear in the Arctic benefits by losing the genes for brown pigment. The advantage comes from breaking something that was already there. So let's just put it all together. This is the key difference our source material is highlighting. Macroevolution is a theory that requires a massive gain of brand new information to build complexity. But what we actually observe in nature, natural selection, is a process that helps creatures survive by often causing a loss of genetic information. According to the source, these two ideas are heading in opposite directions. And that leaves us with this final thought from biophysicist Bernd Olaf Kubers. He says, the problem of where life came from is really the same as the problem of where all that biological information came from. And that, really, is a fundamental question to think about.